Welcome back to the Enlightened Misfits podcast. I am your host, Lauren, and in today's episode, I have an amazing guest here today. She is an intuitive coach. This is Jocelyn. Now, Jocelyn, how did you start on your journey? Like, what kind of, if you are open to it, would you tell us a little bit about, um, tarot and like business growth or how tarot came about in your life, or maybe even just like your own spiritual awakening? Like, how did that all start for you?
Well, I feel I was intuitive my whole life. Um, but I didn't know other people that were intuitive or other people that had this, and nobody talked about it. So I just thought everybody felt this way, and I don't really feel it's gifts. I just feel some people are more in tune than others, and then you can learn to be more in tune. So when 2020 came around, I started taking courses, and I was doing a lot of personal growth, and I was playing with tarot, and I started taking courses to fill my time during 2020. And I was taking spiritual courses. So that's when my spiritual awakening really happened. And I learned that, yes, I have these gifts, and no, not everybody uses their gifts, and that I can make a difference for people. And my heart goes to women. And my heart goes to women for a number of reasons, because women, we're always put on the back burner a little bit. And so, and we under earn, so we don't earn as much as men. And yeah, so I wanted to help women in business. There's so many women entrepreneurs out there, whether it's a MLM side hustle or you're making some stuff for the craft booth at the local farmers market or craft table. Like, there's so many women out there, but yet they seem to be all on their own and all alone. Where me as like a tarot reader, I can use tarot to help you with those big decision makers making, problems you have. We can problem solve together. We can understand market trends. And I've loved tarot for years. And it was funny. My husband finally said, like 2 or 3 years ago, he goes, just do tarot and we'll all be happy. And so that's what I'm doing now, tarot, and we're all happy, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just love it. And I do find in business, women are, whether they're with a big company or they're on their own, they're lonely and they're on their own. And that's where I come in with tarot. Women are more intuitive than men. And so we're trying to get ahead in a logic world, which is like a man's world, where we're more an intuitive being, right? So we need to bring our intuition into that space of the man's world and stop competing with the men the way they do things and do things our way.
right. Yes. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you with that. And thanks for sharing that. I actually always loved tarot cards. Me and my grandmother used to do it. My mom will probably listen to this podcast and be like, "Ugh," but you know, I was introduced to them very young. I didn't even know what I was really doing. I would just kind of pick cards, Google them, all that stuff when I was younger. Since fast forward to my teens or in my like early 20s, I was like, oh wow, I seen this card all the time. It was always like the sun card. The tower card really scared me, or like the devil always scared me. And I realized that I was just replacing, like an addiction to like men. Not that I was addicted to men. I was addicted to codependent relationships. So it was
Yes.
like if I could help them, um I like felt like, okay, I have a place or I'm enough or whatever. And then I realized I needed to stop doing that, so I actually would just go to my tarot cards instead of texting that person or going on a date with that person. And I realized that it really helped me see, instead of looking for like answers outside of myself, I was able
Yeah.
to look with them within. And that's kind of how and I always warn people when they do tarot or they're open to like different portals or different spirits or whatever, just be very careful, because they can get you into some trouble, because your ego can kind of play like you want it a certain outcome, right? But it's like I think the memes on I think I've seen it on TikTok, and it's like you do a tarot card reading for yourself and you don't like that outcome. So you can do it again. And it's like, oh, I like this outcome. It's like that's not really how that works. Like you can't keep some for me, that doesn't work. When people tell me that, I was like, I wish that worked for me. I just get the same exact cards every single time. Like it doesn't change, you know? So I always tell people to be, you can use them for your own answers. So I love that you help other women do that because I feel like it was very healing for me when I started.
Yeah, and I always tell my clients, number one, I'm just here to guide you. I'm not here to tell your future. I'm not here to tell you that, the day you're going to die. And I don't have the lotto numbers. And if you're having a tarot reading, you should make sure that whoever's doing the reading for you has those ethics. We don't know that information.
Yeah,
Plus, you have free will, right? So if you don't like my reading and I told you you're going to zig this way and you decide to zigzag that way, that is your prerogative, right? You have free will. And also, if the card doesn't resonate with you, why doesn't it resonate with you? What is in there that either has caused you fear
yeah,
or anger? Like, where is that emotion coming from? You can sit with a card that doesn't resonate with you, I think, longer than you sit with a card that does resonate.
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So there's so much to learn. And I find personal growth, and it's great. We read these books, but it's very linear, right? There's nobody there to say, hey, I must have read 500 books in the last 12 years, right? Like
right,
I
yeah,
absorb books. And so, but there was nobody there to say, okay, but this is what you need to do, or this is
right,
where your deficit is, or this is where you can grow. Do you know what I mean? Or you need to
yeah,
leave behind. And I found in tarot, that's what it tells me.
yeah,
Tells me, and it's personal and it's individual. Like I could read for you and I could read for Sally and I could read for Shirley, and you are not going to get the same reading.
right, yeah,
So it's personal to you, which I like. And that's great for business as well, right? Because we read
yes,
so many business books and we listen to the business gurus and what they do, but what they're doing might not be what we need
right,
as an individual.
yeah. Yeah, I love that you said that about business because that's pretty much how I got into human design because we're all uniquely in our energetic blueprint of like our DNA. It's just energy, right? So everybody's different. And constantly people I would, pay for this business coach, pay for this mentor. And I'm like, I'm not like any of you guys. Like I feel like I'm different. Like I'm completely different. Well, I am. I'm a projector. There's only what 21% or something like that in the world. So I'm not the 80%. I'm not the 70%, So I just felt like I can't do business like you guys. I don't have a lot of energy to do working 9 to 5. Like I just can't do it. And I realized, through understanding my own human design too in business, everybody has a different strategy. And like you said about tarot, it's the same thing,
Yeah.
So yeah, I love
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that too. I love that you bring the human
that.
design into that because tarot isn't just like the pictures on the card. It's the person in front of you. It's the energy they're carrying. There's so many factors, right? And when I start a reading, I always start like with their birth date and the cards that are affiliated with that, and their zodiac sign and what the card is for the year, and that helps me. Really, those three simple cards helps me dive into somebody's personality and see how the reading is going to go. Because if they're very closed in those first three cards, the rest of the reading is going to be very cold, like closed. And I'm not going to get the energy I need from that person. And I too went from mentor to coach to mentor to coach. And what am I not doing right? And what I
Right,
was not doing right was being my authentic self.
right.
Right. And so tarot has helped me in that way, right? Come up with my authentic self. And I see that a lot in other women. It's funny. I'm taking a marketing course right now. And the lady that's teaching the course, she's like, what's your ideal client? And I'm like, well, I have a client and she's a high powered accountant and she comes to me for tarot and she's my ideal client. And she was like, an accountant? And I'm like, yes, because accountants can be intuitive, right? Like they
Yeah,
can need
very
direction.
smart. Yeah,
Yeah.
numbers. Hello.
It's it's not just these wooey flowy people that need personal growth and direction, right? It's everyone.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah. So I feel I'm on the cusp of helping bring this more into the mainstream and the forefront. Um,
I love that.
I had a dream the other night and it was funny. In the dream, somebody asked me what I did, and I said, I am a consultant with Fortune 500 companies and I help them with their intuition by using tarot, and I help them merge logic and intuition in their culture and in their company. And I had to get out of jump out of bed and write that down. I was like, holy mackerel. That's
Yeah,
exactly what I want to do.
yes.
Right.
Yeah,
So
that's amazing. I was gonna say, wow, I got like the like shivers when you said that. Goosebumps all
yeah.
over my body. I love that.
Yes. I was like, where did this come from? And so, being an intuitive yourself, you understand like things
Yeah,
come when you least expect them,
yeah.
right? So,
You probably
yeah,
asked at some point, some time, some yeah, whatever, and then you got the answer. I do that too. It's like I asked you for that answer 2 months ago. I didn't even remember that I asked you that. You couldn't have told me that. Like I had to write it down, go through my journals, and I'm like, oh, I did ask that question. What does that mean? You know?
yeah,
So yeah. So no, I love that for you.
yeah. So, that's the direction I want to go with. I also like women under earn, and
Yeah.
even women that are making like six figures or seven figures, they're still under earning if they're not living an authentic life to themselves, right? And
Yeah.
so I like to use tarot cards um with women, even with big career goals, because are their goals like their goals, or are they their company's goals, or are they,
Yeah.
if you're working 9, 10 hours a day and you're not seeing your family, is that really where you want to be?
Right.
Right? We need to find a balance for that. And I think a lot of people are out of balance right now. I do know like we're in for a spiritual awakening as a collective, like we're
Yeah.
going through that right now.
Yeah.
Um, but like we have to balance. We've lost our way a little bit. Like 10 hours a day at work isn't as important as being home with a child and
Right.
things like that. So like I help people who are under earners who are making big money. I help people who are under earners who are making zero money, right? Like
Right.
it's like a long spectrum of people.
Yes. Yeah. That's good. That means you have a very wide, broad, um, you know, collective of people that you can serve. And that's amazing. Because I kind of was, so when you said about, helping somebody that earns six figures, seven figures, and I was like being at work at 10 hours a day, I was that person. I made six, seven figures. I had all the money. And then I decided, my daughter's young. She needed me at home. She's only 4, and went through a terrible divorce, terrible custody, all this stuff, and I had a really good job, and people never could understand why I left my really good job to make my like to actually I didn't even know what I was going to do. I have to be honest. I did network marketing, and I did marketing for so long that I've had that income that I could just live off that income. And that's what I did for a while until I realized. And then I had a huge, YouTube channel that not a lot of people know about, but it was just like, that's when I kind of started doing tarot, reading tarot, channeling, all that stuff. And then I decided I feel like I could, my thing was I would give people the messages that they needed to hear, or that spirit wanted me to deliver, or something like that. But then what were they doing with it? They had no guidance, and I was supposed to be that person to help them. So then I kind of transferred over to like, I don't want to be a coach. I want to be a guide. I want to give them guidance for something, or if I have a message to give to them that could help them change their entire life, that's who I wanted to be, like that person to kind of help guide them. So that's kind of how I transferred into my, like what I do now. I mean, obviously it evolved. Like, I feel like I evolve like every 6 months or something. It's been changing a lot, but that's okay. And I realized I don't make, maybe I don't make seven figures. Maybe I don't even make six figures some years, but I still make enough that I feel like what I'm doing authentically to myself is making me so happy, to the point that I don't have to work 5 days a week. You know, I can work 3 days and make the same amount of income that somebody makes and hustles. And like, it's like more of like that hustle culture isn't that anymore. Right. It's
Yeah.
like, it's not there anymore. And I feel like women in general, even men providing for their family, they're realizing that hustling is not getting them anywhere quicker. Right. So I love that that is being shown to the collective, because people think they have to work harder. And I'm like, no, just work smarter, not
Yeah.
harder. Like,
Yeah.
you make $1 million a year, but I guarantee you, you're probably home a month out of the entire year, like out of all of the days cumulative. So, like, how is that fun for you? Like, do you get to, do you get to hang out with your family? Do you get to enjoy the money that, no, probably not. So, yeah, I love that you can help your clients with that.
Yeah, and I totally get where you're coming from because I left my 9 to 5, and I'm not sure if I'm a projector in human design or not.
We'll have to do your, yeah, we'll have to do your chart.
Don't think so, but my problem is I don't know my birth time, so that's a whole
Oh,
other
okay.
fish, right? Big
Yeah.
family, youngest child, don't know my birth time, right? So, um, but it didn't fit into the 9 to 5 mold. Like,
Yeah.
it didn't work for me. My two youngest kids were adopted from China. And I was like, why am I leaving these children that I fought so hard to get
Right.
and going to work 8 hours a day? So I did network marketing. And, somebody said, were you successful in it? And I was like, I was successful enough to stay home with my kids. Did I make the 1% money? No. But I was able to replace my little 9 to 5 job and stay home with my kids.
Yeah.
And, now they're going to be 19 and 20 next month. And so they've always had a parent home. Now, my husband has his own business as well. And so I read for tarot for him. He's the only man I read for tarot because in business, because my heart's with business, but my heart's with him too. He needs his tarot.
Yeah.
So they've had the not norm life, right? Of where both parents were home. And if they needed us, we could drop things at a moment's notice and go. And I think that's missing. I think we need to get some more guidance,
Hmm.
like spiritual guidance back into our society. And I feel people need to live more authentically. And when I read tarot for people, oftentimes I'm not shocking them with the news.
Hmm.
I'm just bringing their secrets out to them, right? I had a client who was being very she was being bullied, and this other coworker was abusive to her at work, and I was like, leave your job. Like, why are you putting up with this? And the company wasn't seeing it, and they weren't doing anything, and it was a part-time job. It wasn't like, even if it was a 7 figure, like your mental state is worth so much more
Right.
than any money, right? And she's left that job. She has found another job that she loves. And
Mm,
I read tarot for her again. Like, I read this last year, and then about 6 months ago, her cards were totally different. It was all about new beginnings and
yeah.
happiness. Where before it was like, you need to find your voice. You need to stand up for yourself. You need to like do the repercussions, even if you do stand up for yourself, because you've known you've done the right thing. So,
Right.
you know, I just don't read tarot and then leave you. I'll send you off with things you need to do,
Right.
like journaling or meditation or learning to use your voice. And then we do follow up. So I like to read somebody's cards probably every quarter in business. Personal, I
Okay.
do probably every 6 months, but business, I would do every quarter just so we can see what's coming up fresh for the quarter to
Hmm.
do a we can do a big 24 card spread once a year if you want, so you can plot out your months. I find that's good to give you an overall feeling of what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But it can be too much too, right? Because we did one in April, come like December, we're like, what did she say? You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like
Right.
it can be too much, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I check in with you every quarter just to see how we're going. Or if somebody wants to check in more, then we can make that happen too.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I think a lot of people listening to this will love that too, because I know that a lot of people love tarot and I feel like they don't know where to go. I'll read their tarot cards, or I can do stuff in business, or I can connect with people's spirit guides in business and help them with like do different stuff like channeling and stuff. But most of the time when I tell them they have to try it, like I'm not going to tell you, like you said, I'm not going to tell you, okay, this is exactly your business strategy. This is the paid ad strategy. This is going to get you this money. Like it's not. I'm going to say, try it. I can look at your birth chart. I can tell you this is what they're telling me to tell you, and you got to try it. Like you got to try to see like what works. So
Yeah.
yeah, I always tell
Yeah.
people to watch people that say definite answers because it's not
Yeah.
certain. It can always change.
No, no. And I get a lot of people that are afraid of tarot too, right? Like they'll be like, oh my God, I don't know if I can let you read my tarot. I don't want to know this. And I'm like, I'm not like the death card. And I think you said the devil card. Like
Yeah,
those two, just the name of them frighten people. And they're not frightening cards,
no, I
right?
know.
Like there's more frightening cards. Like the Three of Swords, I think is a very frightening
Or
card.
the
Like talk
tower,
about,
a tower
or
card.
the
Oh
tower.
shit, what's getting ready to happen?
Yeah, exactly. And so there are more scary cards. So really
Yeah,
there shouldn't be fear around tarot. And
yeah,
I read tarot intuitively and I read it for the good and
yeah.
for the best intention for the person that I'm reading for. So even if I do see things are going to be rocky, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about ways we can strategize around that. Like we're not just going to leave
Yeah,
you going, right? But
yeah,
the other thing it is people who want me to read tarot to see if their ex is going to fall in love with them again, but I can't read tarot like that. It has to be for the
me either.
person in front of me and it's for
Yeah,
you. And
yeah,
you need to fall in love with yourself before anybody else falls in love with you again, right?
yes,
Like,
yeah. I will not even read when people say, "Oh, can you read it with my ex?" About, and I was like, "No, is if there's two people that I'm reading for, they both have to give me permission. I will not cross that. The universe will not even. I will hear like crickets because they will not. They know my boundaries are very strict about that. I used to do that. Sure, I learned not to do that. Because
yeah,
you get karma for that, and it's like you can't be reading people that don't give you permission. That like you can't be doing all that stuff. Like that is not. That's against the walls of the universe. Like you cannot do that. And no, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Like, you can other tarot card readers, sure, they would do that. Though you pay them the money, you pay them a lot of money, they'll do that. But that's just not my integrity when it comes to tarot.
well, yeah. And I feel I'm a very ethical
Yeah,
tarot reader. The stories I tell are stories I'm allowed to tell from my clients.
yeah, yeah,
And I think if you're looking for a tarot reader, you have to make sure they're ethical, right? Like
yeah,
I can only read for the person in front of me. I can't read any medical matters that I'm not a doctor. I
yeah,
can't read any
yeah,
legal matters because I'm not a lawyer. Now I
yeah,
can support you in legal matters,
yeah.
right? But I
Mhm.
can't tell you the outcome of a lawsuit or a custody battle or anything like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you who the baby daddy is because I'm not Maury Povich. Like I cannot.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? So
I'm not a
those,
paternity test.
yeah. So I'm not doing those things. Like I feel there are
That's the
tarot
bad
readers.
part of tarot. That's what gives
Yeah.
like the bad. Like when I see these people on TikTok and they asking these questions, I'm like, I'm pregnant. Go get a pregnancy test. Like
Yes.
there's other things that you could figure out if you are pregnant, if that's the baby daddy or whatever, or is your ex going to come back? Probably about Mercury retrograde. Probably are they going to say probably not? Like they're not. They're teaching you a lesson. The reason why an ex comes back is they're trying to teach you a lesson.
Yeah. Exactly. And the lesson might be there's the door.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, but if you think you might be pregnant, follow your intuition,
Right. Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Don't listen to a tarot card. Follow your
Yes.
intuition. We all have intuition. It all speaks to us differently.
Right.
Um, it comes to us in different ways, but we were never taught to follow our intuition, right?
Right.
Like we were never to, little angel and devil on our shoulders. We've never been really taught like to listen to those people. And that's how I feel I am through tarot is I'm helping people with their intuition or um I'm their little angel or maybe devil on their shoulders.
Right.
Sometimes, if it's not what you want to hear, I might be the devil on your shoulder, right? Or
Yeah.
something you don't. And but then again, you have free will. So if it's not what you want, have a great day. Go on, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not the end of the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I feel like we're
Yeah.
very, very similar with that just because when I do readings, sometimes I specifically tell them, I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear. You're not going to like me about certain things. That's okay. Like, I don't take any of that stuff personal, like when it's
Yeah.
like that type of stuff, because it's just like my ego. It's filtered through. I try my best to filter things through just my higher self when I'm reading and not through ego because I feel like sometimes it can be filtered through. Our ego can kind of step in the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's just normal in general for any tarot card reader. And I feel like most of the times, I was like, I feel like this is a message for me too. Like the things that come out in the reading usually are somewhat of a message too for me. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I always take the same advice that I give out.
Yeah, exactly. And I had one client say, "Yeah, I've heard this from many therapists. I need to do this, I need to do that." I'm like, "So why aren't you doing it?" Right?
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
if,
Yeah.
if you're not happy and you want to do better, why aren't you doing it? Right? Like just do it. The cards aren't going to tell you anything different.
Yeah, and the cards are not going to change if you don't change. Like
Yeah,
I had a
exactly.
client, I had a client that said to me, I think this is the fourth time that she asked me to do a reading for her about this job. And I said, we've done one-on-one sessions together about, human design also helps with decision making. And I know that tarot cards
There's
also help too. So if I'm telling her something or I'm giving her guidance, she already, and I always tell people too, if you're going to come to me and ask me a question, you probably already know the answer. So what is the answer that you're resisting, right? And
yeah.
that's another question I wanted to ask you when it comes to like tarot. I'd love to know your perspective on letting go of blocks. Like, do you help facilitate or identify blocks and help your clients release them mentally or emotional if that's maybe a mental block or emotional block?
Yeah, of course I do. Because a lot of times blocks are what is keeping you from being where you want to be, right?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
that's the bare bones of it. So yeah, I will help release blocks. So a tarot reading with me isn't just flipping cards and going, you're going
Right.
to meet
Yeah.
handsome man. It is, this is what you need to do. And this is how you're going to do it. I like to think it's the what and the how. Now, depends how long the session is. I do work in Akashic records and I do work in chakras as well. So if we need to release some stuff, we can book another session and
Yeah.
release things that way. Um, Oftentimes I tell them how to ground themselves, how to work through these problems or these situations, or it might not be a situation. It might be just the boundaries set, things like that. I'm going to help them release why they can't set those boundaries, like where in their body, this is how I deserve to be treated. Like, why are you not letting, what's going to happen if they do set these boundaries, right? A lot of people set boundaries and they think, like the world is going to hate them. And
Yeah.
you're laugh at how many people that are in my office that can't set a boundary, that go home and set a boundary and like nobody cared. Like nobody, they just
Right.
paid
They're like,
attention
okay.
to my boundary. They're like,
Yeah.
okay. Like, so we carry these fears around that most times aren't even real. Right.
Right.
And we have to let them go. And they're based on our perspective, not on somebody else's perspective, because they have their own issues and their own trauma. I like to suggest journaling. I like to suggest meditating. Um, and meditating in a way that works for you, because meditating doesn't always work as a sitting in a chair and sitting quiet,
Yeah.
stepping out into nature to meditate, like finding your niche of meditating, as well as journaling. That I'm not a huge journaler myself.
Yeah.
um, I'm a better vlogger, and I am a better sit in the car and talk to myself kind of person.
Yeah.
So you have to find where your journaling is, and not everything looks the same for every person.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say mine, when you're blogger or sitting in the car and then journaling, it seems like every 3 months, it's either I'll do videos, a whole bunch of videos, or like I'll just have to sit by myself and just like voice record myself saying stuff, or I will do a couple months full of like journeying. I was like, oh, that must have been like when I wanted to journal. Like, cause a lot of times, like lately, I have not been journaling, but I've been voicing my, like voice texting myself journal stuff. So it's like I've getting it out. And I also wanted to touch on when you said meditation, because I feel like being a meditation coach myself, when I try to help people meditate, because there's so many people. Like I just did it was last month. I did it for a corporate business about meditation. And they wanted me to come in and like teach their employees about meditation. So I was like, how am I supposed to do this? I was like, okay. So then like when I was like talking to them, they're asking me like how I meditated, or, I can sit, I don't need to have quiet. I just need to be able to hear my thoughts. Like maybe it's just by myself out in nature or whatever. But when I had told them about meditation, they're like, well, I can't sit and listen to a guided meditation because I don't have time. I was like, well, why can't you just sit at your desk and listen to what you're thinking and write it down? You know, that is all. Like when I had said that, I feel like 10 people in the room were like, wait a second. So meditation is just listening to my thoughts? Like that's it? And I was like, that's it.
That's
It's
it.
taking yourself out of your, like whatever's going on like in your day, and you're just listening to your thoughts, because those same seven thoughts are going to be repeating in your head it's like a little, like
Yeah,
recorder.
little recording. Yeah.
If you're telling yourself you hate this job, you hate yourself, you hate this, you hate that, you can't wait to go home, that's going to repeat all day long, and it's going to come out in your actions that you're doing at work, or if you're productivity or whatever, and it's like, people read, and I don't care, you don't have to be intuitive, you don't have to even know anything about energy, but if you're miserable, everybody else can feel that, even if they don't know what's going on with their own body, they can feel that's just
Yeah.
energy, so
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting that you said that about meditation, because I personally think, especially with you, in business too, I think meditation is huge when it comes to calming your mind, even if it's 3 minutes a day. I feel like that is huge, because like if you go from zero, 3 minutes a day, and you keep doing that and keep going, up to 10 minutes, I know the gurus say you should do it an hour a day. I personally don't even do it an hour a day, maybe 30 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. There's some days I don't meditate, so
Yeah.
it's like all of us have kids, we have real life problems. The last thing we want to do is meditate sometimes. So, like, it is,
And what like for you? Like I was at the ball field with a baseball mom, and love my baseball moms. And she was saying we were at a game. I think it was like 11 o'clock in the morning. She's like, "What did you do this morning?" I said, "Well, I got up and meditated." And she goes, "Oh, I wish I had time to meditate." And then she went on to say how she likes to get up in the morning and sit quietly and have her coffee and smell her coffee. And I'm like, that's meditating. Do you not understand that?
Yeah.
That's meditating. What you're doing is meditating. She goes, I am. I said, it's not sitting there going, oh, and
Yeah.
look for every person. And I think it was Jay Shetty, the
Yeah.
monk, used to be the monk. He said that when he was a monk, he was taking a train through somewhere, and every stop he would get off to go meditate. And one of the other monks said, "Why do you get off the train and go find some place to meditate?" He goes, "Because I need a quiet place to meditate." And they're like, "No, you need to learn to meditate in the chaos."
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And so we have a misconception on what meditation is, right? So like
Yeah.
if
Yes.
taking
100%.
those few like smells of your coffee in the morning is meditating for you. And that's what I tell my clients. If that's meditating and you have this 15 minutes in the morning where the house is quiet and it's just you, that is meditating. If writing all your worries down on a page to get them out of your head, that is meditating, right? Like it's what works for you.
Right. Or even before you get out of bed, sometimes, like if it's like an early day or I know it's going to be like really busy, that I'll do it. Like I will do like gratitude or some type of something to like tension setting, like mindset and tension setting before I get out of bed. Because, you get out of bed, you kind of go out about your day, shit can happen, whatever,
Yeah.
and it's like, shit, I should have took those couple minutes in the morning to kind of set my mindset because it's all about mindset.
It is all about mindset. And you said about like people's energy and they hate their job and they hate this and they hate that.
Yeah,
If you can find gratitude in the things you hate or the
yeah,
things that are bothering you,
yeah.
that changes your energy and then other things will come to you.
Right.
So you might have to find gratitude or look at things in a different way. So the lady that was at her work who was being bullied by somebody else, I said, what makes this person this way? What makes this person that
Right.
she has to treat you this way? Like, let's look at her with a sympathetic heart. I didn't want to take anything away from what she was telling me because it was a terrible situation. But
Yeah.
why would you treat somebody at work that way? Like,
Right.
what's wrong with that person and their energy? And let's be grateful we're not that person, right? Like that
Yes.
there's so much more to, and I guess it's a little bit of forgiveness. I guess that helps you with your
Yeah.
forgiveness. But there's so much more if we change and we look for the little bits of gratitude that we can change our way. And I think tarot helps bring those things to light too. It brings our good qualities, our bad qualities, not that things are bad, but where we need to improve, brings
Yeah.
those to light. Our relationships, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Or the like, or I was gonna say the shadow, the real thing that the society, like spiritual society, has kind of also, or I should say society in general, like it's like shadow, your shadow part. I realized through the shamanic journey that I'm going through right now that the shadow has the most wisdom through it. So it's like understanding your shadows is actually going to give you more wisdom than maybe the light side of you because you like that side of you. So it's like, I realized understanding my shadows, loving my shadows, and it's like like to evolving them actually gave me more power, I feel like, than when they tell you, oh, just like let go of all of your worries. And it's just like, no, figure out why. I don't like when people say that. I don't resonate with that because it's just like, sure, you need to let go. But like that's just attaching to whatever outcome because then you're like blocking yourself. But when you like you're not supposed to like get rid of your shadow, you can't, like that's part of you. You have to figure out how you can transcend it to turn it into light and learn more about it to so it can work with you. And I think that was my hardest thing because forgiveness, like you said, I had to figure out a way I could forgive my ex-husband. I had to forgive, because these are people that I had to do it for myself. And a lot of times for forgiveness, when I work with my clients, they're very resistant to it because they're like, I'm not forgiving them because they did this. That's true for you. But if I play devil's advocate, which I normally always do, because my mentors have done this for me, that what was their perspective on the situation? Now, granted, if they abused you, you don't deserve that abuse, but maybe they got abused when they were kids. And it was like I had to come from a place of, compassion when it came to my ex-husband or the people that I, have abused me in the past. And I had to forgive them because maybe they weren't aware of what they were doing. Most of them were, but, it's like having that understanding. And I was able to, people still to this day, they're like, how did you forgive your ex-husband? I said, for one, he doesn't deserve my energy. And for two, I forgave him because he'll never say sorry. And I needed to let go of that, and it's
yeah.
the best thing I have ever done. Now, if you told me this 2 years ago that I had to forgive my ex-husband and then I had to forgive him and like, give him compassion. Now that doesn't mean I let him back in. There's a boundary that he could never emotionally abuse me again. There's no emotional reaction. He could do anything, even, and he tries to do it to my daughter, you know, and there's no emotional reaction. Yes, it hurts, but I just teach her what she's going to allow from him and what she's not going to, you know. So she's very
Yeah.
strong, knowing you're not allowed to do that to me. Mommy says you're not allowed to. Well, she usually says, Mommy says you're not allowed to do that. And I mean, usually it's very receptive, but it's just teaching her emotional boundaries and being able to know what's right from wrong at 4 years old. you
Yeah,
know?
I know that's wonderful. I too was in an abusive relationship in my first marriage, and so we have a lot of similarities
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And yeah, and now my oldest son is 31 and he is reconnecting with his father, and I'm having to let go of my feelings about that
Yeah.
because he's an adult.
Yeah.
Um but I have forgiven that man. Not that I
Yeah.
would invite him into my home. Not that
Right.
it doesn't bother me when I see him in my driveway picking up my 31-year-old son, but I am not giving him my energy. I'm
Right.
not giving my time. You
Right.
know,
Because
I
that's what they
don't.
want. Yeah.
I really feel deep in my heart that he doesn't know how to love, and so that's a whole other
Yeah.
podcast. I'm sure,
I know.
right,
I
man?
was gonna say that. I was gonna say yes. I can speak about all of that too. I
Yeah,
didn't even know what like narcissistic personality disorder was, and empathy, and like I always said to myself, how can somebody not know how it is to feel like if they treat somebody like shit? How do they not have that feeling? And one of my therapists, one of the many therapists I had, was like, empathy. You hurt somebody, do you feel hurt after? I was like, of course. I didn't mean to hurt that person, but I was hurting. And I didn't realize it until after the fact that I was being rude or whatever. But I would always apologize. But it never happened in any of those situations. And she's like, because they don't know what empathy is. They don't know how to put themselves in somebody else's shoes. And they have to learn that very young. And most of these people don't. Like they just don't have. And I was like, oh, is there like a thing for that? And she's like, yes, it's a disorder. And I was like, okay,
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
all right.
yeah. Yeah.
So
And
I'm not the
he,
problem. Okay.
yeah,
yeah.
he's never going to take responsibility for what he did. And
No.
he's never, he didn't speak to his own son for probably 15 years. Like,
Yeah.
he missed so much. So I have to feel sorry for him. He missed out on a great kid. He missed out
Yeah.
on great stones. Like, all
Yeah.
because he couldn't get his act together to figure things out.
Yeah.
Right. And so
Yeah.
I do feel sorry for him. And once I reframed that, a lot of my anger broke away. And
Yeah.
yes, I kept
Yes.
my walls and my boundaries up, but not my walls up, my boundaries.
Yeah.
But I felt stronger then when I knew that
Yeah.
what when you make the person feel when you make them seem a giant and the energy is a giant, they're going to be a giant. When you make it
Yeah.
small and the
Yeah.
energy is a small, they're going to be small. Yeah.
Yeah. It took me a
Yeah.
very long time to learn that. And I hope for anybody listening to this, like, I know there's a lot of people that are going through this, or people connected to me in domestic violence relationships or whatever, because I feel like the biggest fear, that is the biggest fear. It was why I didn't grow up in a broken, quote unquote, broken family, like my parents divorcing or whatever. That's what they called it in my generation. But he did. Obviously my daughter will go through it now, but now I realize that it will hurt her more if I stayed with him and I dealt with that abuse, because I don't know if I could I wouldn't be the person I am today if it wasn't for that. And I think he's starting to maybe he doesn't. I don't know. I don't talk to him. So I don't know what his perspective is on this. Um, but I think he's starting to realize she's 4 and he's already missed out. He doesn't, he'll come once a month or whatever. I do have the support finally of his family. They're willing to help. They're willing to step up. They're willing to, take her on his weekends, which is fine. They don't need to. I'm open to it because that's the custody agreement. That's what he wanted. But she has so many other people that love her, and that's all I care about, because I'm not that person that is going to keep my kid from people that love her, regardless if they're connected to him, right? Like that was never, and I feel like a lot of moms, like, oh, I'm not going to give my kid to the dad because he just loves her in a different way. And I'm not
Yeah.
allowed to tell him how he should love her. That's not my job. And I feel like a lot of moms, they think they know best, which they do. But I had to let go of trying to control the way that my ex-husband or his family loved my daughter, because that's not my
Yeah.
job. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly. And I was very lucky. My ex-husband's family was always wonderful to my son. They
Yeah.
took him anytime.
Yeah.
Um, that his father
Helps. It's
was
very supportive.
stepping up.
Yeah.
And I wanted my son to grow up not thinking that my relationship with his father was how relationships were. And
Or
that is,
his fault. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Or that our relationship as a married couple, that's why I left basically, was because I didn't want him thinking that this is what marriage was and this is what love looked like, because that's not what it looked like.
Right. Yes.
So a lot of
This is what
times
it's
we can
not
do
supposed to
things.
look like. Here's an
Yeah, yeah.
example of
So a
what it
lot of
doesn't
times
look
we
like.
can't do things for ourselves. So we do it
Yeah.
for somebody else, right?
Yeah.
So, if you can't see for your own self, see for your children, right? Like,
Yeah. I know I had to do that. That I couldn't see it for myself. And I know the day that I got pregnant, when I asked, because I was kind of going through a spiritual awakening, and I had asked the universe to get me out of this toxic situation. I wanted to get divorced. I probably should never got married. It was just like, what was I doing? Like, I felt like I was just like spiraling. And then I found out I was pregnant, and I was like, I asked to get out of the situation, not stay binded to the situation. But I
yeah,
realized in hindsight, I didn't realize that she was the reason I was going to leave,
yeah,
and
yeah,
be strong enough to leave. And people always ask me, they still ask me to this day, well, why did you stay so long? And most of those
uh-huh,
people haven't been in a cycle of abuse or haven't been in an abusive relationship, because that's one thing you don't ask somebody that has been,
yeah,
because they're scared. They only know this person, and it's like that cycle of like, I'm going to do better. And it's that trauma bond, and it's this and it's that. So it's a little bit deeper than that. But yeah, I definitely didn't realize that I had to do it for my daughter, and then till I was strong enough to do it for myself. Now I do it for myself and then my daughter,
yeah,
and then I realized, being in a healthy relationship, I also said this, I can't wait till I can get into a healthy relationship. That isn't easy either,
no,
because I still, and I realized that last year, and now, coming up in October, it'll be 2 years for me and my boyfriend, that it is a healthy relationship. And it's because we're both healing. He has trauma, I have trauma, you know, it's just, and we both heal separate so we can heal together in the relationship. And it hasn't been easy. I'm not even going to begin to tell you how hard it has been, because I always would like to resort back to those patterns of, it's just easier to do it this way. And it's like, it's not. So I always tell people, if you are in a toxic relationship, or if you have been in one, don't think it's going to be easier getting in a healthy one, because
yeah.
yeah,
They all take work. Every relationship takes work.
yeah,
And we're
everything
not
takes
taught
work.
this thing. We're not taught about how to work with our relations, right? We're taught
Hmm.
things that chemistry and biology. Well, I don't use any of those, right?
Yeah,
Like that's what
right.
we're taught.
Yeah, and
And
it'll help me in a relationship.
and so we're not taught that marriage is hard. We're not taught that business relationships are hard. We're not
Yes.
taught that, you know, I think we get most of our information from TV or Netflix or whatever now, right? Like
Yeah.
on
For
on what
TikTok.
life should
Yeah, social
be. And
media. Yeah.
and that's not real life, right?
Right.
So yeah, so it's hard. And talk about not following your intuition. When I married my first husband, um I the day of the wedding, I was like I was just in disarray, like just crying. And I kept saying to my sister, I can't say those words. I can't say those words. And she kept saying, you're just nervous. You'll be okay. And she was just doing what she thought was right,
Yeah.
but really not following my intuition at all. Right.
Hmm.
I was in hysterics. The day I met my husband, I have been married to for 25 years or going on that, was the most peaceful day of my life.
Yeah.
It was peaceful. Like everything was fine. And I couldn't wait to say that we were married. Right. So
Yeah.
follow your intuition. if a situation
Yeah.
is
I
isn't
feel like
to
that's
your
exactly why I love that that's why we're connected because I feel like our stories are very similar in different aspects because I was the same way. Like my dad even said to me, "You can say no, Lauren." And then I was thinking about everybody else. I was like, "What? Everybody's here. Everybody's already here." And he's like, "Well, we already paid for it. We could have a big party." And he was just like, "But what do I do next? My honeymoon, this, that." Like it was constant. I'm like, "I'll just do it, see if it works. And then if it doesn't, and then my brother had said, well, funny, jokingly, well, you could just get an annulment. And I was like, that's an option. But I didn't get to that point. It was like that was a cycle of us fighting. And then I think we even fought a couple days before the wedding. And I was like, why are we even getting married?
yeah
And it was like he had, and it was the day that I had got pregnant and I had the baby and all this stuff. He had said to my family members, "Oh, I knew what I was doing when I got her pregnant and married her." So he had a plan and I didn't even know his plan. And I was like, "Well, you know he won't have me much longer." So I made a plan to get
yeah
out. So it was like I didn't think that you needed a plan and obviously you do. You can't just leave. So
yeah
it
yeah
was nice
you,
that I had a house. It was my house. I had that place of stability that I could say, get out. You have whatever. In law, like you have 30 days, whatever. But he took it upon himself to, again, do what he normally does best. And he was taken out, by the police. So it's like, that was easy for me. Like, and I feel like the universe at that time was like, we will help you get rid of him. And I was like,
yeah
okay,
yeah 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 exactly
thank you
exactly
so
and
much. I appreciate you. Just get him away.
yeah exactly I have learned my lesson. Talk about
Yeah.
learning your shadow
Lesson.
self.
Yes. I
That's
was like, more
where
of the story of me talking all about that was at that point in that moment. It was the day that I was served with a fake PFA on my daughter's first birthday that I was like, I looked at the police officer and I said, what do I have to sign? And I said, I learned my lesson. I didn't do this, but here, if this is going to keep me from him contacting me, and he's like, oh, no, 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 it's just going to keep you from contacting him. I'm like, I don't contact him. So then, of course, I had to get one against him. And then I was like, but as long as it will keep us completely separate until this is all done in court, I'm happy. Like I've learned my lesson. And he looked at me. He's like, this is probably the easiest PFA I ever had to deliver. And I was like, you're welcome. Have a great day. And then
yeah
he's like, and did you say it was your daughter's first birthday? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, I apologize. I'm so sorry that you have to go through. I'm like, this is literally to
yeah
the key of my life. So it's fine.
yeah
Yeah.
so we've learned our lessons. A
Yes.
lot of people some people take longer to learn their lessons, and
Yeah.
that's just it, right? And
Yeah.
we're not taught what to do. We're not taught how to
Yeah.
navigate all this. Like it is bigger than us. So I do have gratitude for my son that came from that relationship,
Yes.
right? Like,
Yes.
you
100%.
know,
Yeah.
that was my path, and that was my path to him. I fully believe we're on these, paths, and that was my path to
Yeah.
him.
That
And
we
his,
chose. Little do we
yeah,
know, we chose all this. And I'm like, why the hell did I choose that? Like, what lesson? And then I was like, oh, what I shouldn't deal with. Like, that was like the end of like what I'm not going to deal with. But I feel like through all of those experiences, it made me so independent to never have to like, to ever have to rely on it ever. Now that
exactly.
I can kind of rely on my boyfriend, it's harder for me, because I am still healing my like mood and masculine because I'm very masculine and my business and just being a single mom that he's like just let me help you. Like
Yeah.
let me and I'm like okay, so it's easier now because he's much more nurturing than anybody I've ever dealt with. So it makes it easier when he can have understanding and compassion for she's only acting like this because of her past.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I'm trying to change it. It's not that that's not an excuse. Don't get me wrong, but he can actually see I have like he's probably the most understanding person ever. because he doesn't take it personal normally, like sometimes when he's angry or mad or, people get mad. So then he's like, he'll take it personal. You don't ever let me help you. You don't ever let me, and I was like, I know, like that's something that I'm very conscious of, that I have to talk to him, let him understand. Or me, if I don't understand something about him, I tell people this, and I tell him, then help me understand it the way, because I'm not understanding it my way. So I need to understand it your way. And I feel like that can really help. Those words, somebody told me that, I don't know if I read it somewhere or somebody told me that in a book I read, but when there's conflict or something's not going right, the question to the other person is, help me understand it in the way that you want me to understand it.
Yeah.
Because if you guys are fighting and bickering and there's no solution, you have to come back to understanding, right? So those are
Yeah,
just words of
exactly.
wisdom of my relationship advice.
We got off on a tangent onto relationship advice, but that's
I know.
wonderful.
People are
It's
gonna be
where
like,
we
oh,
need,
like most of these
well,
podcast episodes are like all over. People are like, I love it. You talk about this, you talk about that. It's not like you talk about something, so
it's where we needed to go, right?
it was exactly what needed to be said. Yeah.
It's where we needed to go because our life, like you cannot live a life and not have a relationship
Right.
with somebody. And we're not taught
Yeah.
how to navigate all that. We're not taught how to do all that. We're not taught that, you know, people aren't thinking about us. We're only thinking about us. Do you know what I mean? And all
Yeah.
our shadow selves and our deficits and our things that we hate about ourselves. Nobody else is thinking about that
Right.
because they're too busy thinking about their own stuff, right? And
Yeah.
we're not taught how to have a relationship, and we're not taught how to have an argument, right?
Yeah.
So, and we're just not taught these things. And so we need to get it out. We need to do podcasts like this, like where it's just out and it's just two people talking about experiences.
Yeah. And sometimes I forget when we're talking, like when I'm talking to people, I'm like, oh, we're still on a podcast. This is okay. But it's like, usually it's like whatever I always say before the intention, before I get on, is like, spirit, just guide me for whatever I need to say. Tell me I can start coughing or something when I should just shut up, mixed with my recovery of my upper respiratory infection. But is there any last minute, or I should say last thoughts that you wanted to leave with our listeners? And of course, we'll make sure all of your links are in the description box, so people can reach out to you if they want to.
Okay. That's great. No, I've had a great time chatting with you, Lauren. If you're interested in booking, my links will be down there. I have just started a subscription group on Facebook where you pay $5 Canadian a month, which I think is like $4 American because your dollar is so much better.
Maybe,
And
maybe not anymore.
on, I do Facebook Lives on there 3 times a week, where really it's just me rambling and reading tarot. But everybody loves it. So if that interests you, I'd love to have you in my subscription group. It's less than a cup of coffee a month. Yeah, I'm doing lots of other things coming up. I have a masterclass coming up soon. I haven't set the date yet. It's still a work in progress on signs from past loved ones, because that's a lot of my clients have been interested in that as well. So we're gonna get on a Zoom and we're gonna talk about it. And it's gonna be masterclass, like round table led, and where the conversation goes, the conversation goes.
Love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love getting signs from my grandmom or like past loved ones. Usually it's my grandmom, or like winks. Like I call it winks from the universe. It's usually a heart, like randomly, just a random heart shaped rock or something. I'm like, where did that come from? And it's things that you're like, that didn't just get put there.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
that,
Exactly.
that's from the universe. Yeah.
Or that song just didn't happen to play. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? Like, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
That
So
wind did not just carry that feather over here and it's not windy.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my community in my Facebook group have decided that that's one thing they're very interested in. And I think that is another thing we don't learn. We don't learn what
Yep.
happens with us. We don't know like, and I believe we're energy and our
Oh,
energy
I'm
still.
excited. I'm gonna be a part of this.
Yeah.
I'm coming.
So
I'll
yeah,
be
so I
there.
have a master class coming up on that. I just have to figure out a date, and yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be great.
Awesome.
And I love to challenge people's beliefs on tarot as well. So if you're not a tarot person, let me know. I just finished doing a study on tarot and how Christians can use tarot, because I hear a lot
Oh,
from
good.
Christians. Yeah. So yeah, but please be open-minded and not attacking. And we have
Yes.
a discussion, right? Like,
Yes. Just conversation. Yeah. I have a huge, actually, it's funny. The podcast before yours, she actually gave up astrology and tarot, and she has her perspective. And then it was this week when we talked about, and it's a different perspective that I like, because she kind of did it as she was relying too much on it and kind of going down. And so she's like, I want no parts of it. So I said, and she's like, I know that you love astrology, human design, tarot, and all that. And I was like, but I love that you're on the podcast, because for one, it took you probably a lot of courage to get on here, right? To talk about this. And I have a huge network of people that they don't listen to half the crap I say. They think, they don't, if you're listening to me, doesn't mean you need to believe in what I believe in, but just be open-minded to, maybe I can try this. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's just a tool. So I said to her, I would love, there's no judgment here. I'm not going to tell you you have to go back to wanting to do astrology and tarot, because it's all just a tool. None of it
yeah,
is like certain. And if somebody's telling you, like I say, just people, if somebody's telling you that you certainly can do this if you do this, you need to run very, very far away and stop paying them money, because all they're doing is taking your money.
yeah,
I will never
yeah.
tell people they're certain. I would tell people you have to try it. And if you don't do the work and try it, then there's nothing else I could do to help you until you do it. So,
Yeah, exactly. And I like to educate. And if you want to be
yeah,
educated,
yeah,
then follow me, right? Like, and
yeah,
I'm never going to put down your beliefs, but I
yeah.
do need, open dialogue. I got into figuring out Christianity and tarot because my mother is 91 years old and she doesn't understand tarot at all. And
Okay.
she's
Understood.
very deep in she's very deep in her faith, right?
Yeah,
As a
yeah,
Christian, and her work in the church and things like that. And she was very concerned that I was doing a bad thing. And so, okay, so
yeah.
I was like, okay, so how can I understand her point of view and get her to understand my point of view? So I did a study
Right.
on Christianity and tarot, and just to help my mom out a little bit.
That's awesome. Yeah, because
Yeah.
when so I grew up Catholic, and my grandmother was Catholic. She did it in the background. She was kind of like it was like witchcraft era or whatever. You can't talk about it. But a lot of my stuff that I have, was from my grandma. And my mom's like, where'd you get that? I was like, she's like, my mom used to have something like that. I'm like, yeah, I know. I got it from grandma. And my mom's like, like the little smudging things with like
Yeah.
sage and stuff like that, or like her table thing, or her like incense burner. I'm like, it, it's just something that and a lot of people that are Christians. I mean, I had a really toxic relationship with Christianity. So it's like when I channeled Jesus, and I would channel different, like for like healing around my relationship. And I feel like a lot of people have a lot of trauma around relation, or not relation, for religion. And
Yes.
he, one of the things that he said, and a lot of channelers have, said this is, and I'm sure too, is the reason what people portray what he is here to do, like worship him, that's not what he wanted. He
Yeah,
was a
exactly.
healer just like everybody else is a healer, and he wanted to help you help show people they can heal themselves. That's it.
Yes.
So people that
Yes.
say you need Jesus, or you need God, or whatever, and it's just like, you are Jesus because he is you. He's the same person, just a reflection. Obviously, you have a God, like, you know, God is God. I just believe God is God. And, we all have, our third eye is, is your higher self, your, spirit, whatever. And it's like, you have that same power. So it's interesting when people are open-minded to that. They're like, so you mean to tell me I was lied to my whole life? And I was like, pretty much. Not all of
Yeah.
it, but pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if tarot can help increase your connection, then why wouldn't you want that?
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Or trust yourself. Have more
Yeah.
confidence. Yeah, tarot has not did nothing but good things for me.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I've learned my lessons to not go down those paths with the other, and make sure I'm in, you know,
Reputable people,
right.
good.
Yeah, like I've been scammed before because what happens is people latch onto your vulnerability.
Yes.
I wanted answers, and you got to watch and I learned my lessons with that. And I feel like I'm the person to tell, do not pay anybody thousands of dollars for anything unless it's a contract and they're coaching you with guidance.
Yes,
They're not doing
exactly.
spells. Don't do any of that shit. None of that, because it doesn't work. And you're just gonna get wrapped up in some badass karma.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You have to watch
That
out
they're
for yourself.
attached to, and now you're attached to it because you're attached to them, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you have to protect your energy at all costs,
Yes.
right?
100%. Yeah.
Protect yourself. And if something doesn't feel right, it's not right. I had a business coach reach out to me and she wanted to help me with my business and she's local to me and she's yada, yada, yada. And she wasn't going to take any money from me. She was going to take a percentage, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And I'm listening and I'm listening and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And I'm listening. And in my gut, I was like, this isn't right. I said, so how much a percentage are you going to take? I'm going to take 80% of your first $1,000. And I was like,
What?
no, no,
Just so I
no,
get
you're not.
$200?
Yeah,
That's
that's
yeah.
right. Then like 50% and the more money I made, there was still like, I was like, no, no. So you follow your gut on things. We have to
Yeah.
follow our,
Oh my God.
right? Like
Crazy.
we know what's right and what's wrong. And like you know what you need. You know what you need. You really do.
I love
Just
that.
need a guide sometimes, right? Like,
Yes. Yes.
yeah.
100%. Well, thank you so much for everybody for joining us on today's episode with the Enlightened Misfits podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe. You can leave a review and you can share with somebody that you feel that will gain knowledge from listening to this episode. Stay tuned for more captivating conversations in the future. I hope you have an amazing rest of your week, and I will see you next time.